Are you watching closely?
Hello, Two Shot fans. It's the 470th consecutive day where myself or nobody I know is sick, but we're still having to live in fear that we could get sick. Is that right?
This video was brought to you by Corona O's. They mutate so fast, they aren't even shaped like O's on the commercial anymore.
Hi. Now, first off, we're going to continue with where we left off last episode. If you recall, we stated that drug-resistant germs may kill as many as 162,000 Americans a year, more than 4 times the CDC's estimate of 35,000. Now, I know what you're asking. What are drug-resistant germs? And we can tell you that. But first, let's take a look at the article again, shall we?
CDC death certificates. If we had a training session about how to write a death certificate, it was probably during the first week of our residency, Burnham said. That's when you're learning how to log into the electronic medical record system. You're trying to figure out how to keep people alive. If death certificate training was in there, I don't remember it at all. In the guidance the CDC issued in April, that would be last year, the agency provided a reminder of the methods used for decades to determine the cause of death. The agency then applied those techniques to COVID-19. A key lesson is to be specific. Writing that someone died of old age, for instance, is not allowed.
He's old?
He's dead?
Another problem is imprecision. Doctors often blame deaths on hearts or lungs failing when that is simply what happens when people die. The question is, why did the heart and lungs fail at that moment in time? To help doctors be more definitive, the nation's standard death certificate has long included 4 lines, if that many are needed, to list the sequence of events or medical conditions that led to the person's demise. The doctor is expected to start with the immediate cause of death and work back to the root cause. The guidelines give an example of a woman who tested positive for the coronavirus and dies after being on a ventilator in intensive care. The CDC suggested the lines in the certificate's cause of death section will be filled out like this. Immediate cause, acute respiratory distress syndrome, due to pneumonia, due to COVID-19. The final line becomes the underlying cause of death, which the CDC uses for its national mortality statistics. The guidance also said that doctors could record a death as probable COVID-19 if the patient had not tested positive for the virus, but the doctor believed with a reasonable degree of certainty that the virus had killed them.
Yep, this is definitely COVID.
For decades, a similar standard has been included in autopsy guidelines, which suggests doctors use words like probable or presumed if they are not certain of the cause of death.
Probable.
If the patient had pre-existing illnesses that the doctor believed had contributed to the death but not ultimately caused it, the CDC said those conditions should be mentioned in Part 2, a separate section of the death certificate not generally used for the nation's primary mortality statistics.
Questions of overcounting.
On April 16th, the CDC hosted a national conference call to explain the guidelines. Doctors on the call had many questions. One caller asked if the CDC was concerned that virus deaths would be overcounted by allowing words like probable COVID-19 where there were no lab results to confirm the person was indeed infected. A CDC scientist, Farida Ahmed, responded that just 10% of the certificates so far had used words like probable or likely.
10%. I heard one just a while ago. A teenage girl, was going to get vaccinated, but then on that day caught the virus. Obviously, she would have had to have gone through incubation, but that's the way it said it. Either way, on that exact day, she's going to get vaccinated, nothing's wrong with her, she finds out she has COVID and dies on that day. I'm not making this up. I had to read this over several times. This is like a script written by Family Guy or the Manatees. Can we figure this one out with a... Can we show you guys? La, 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 la.
Perfect Family Guy COVID joke.
I'm worried that South Park won't be back this season. You think that's bad? Last night I had a dream where I met Gary Coleman in India. I need to go to the hospital. Think I ate too many India food. No, my friend. You have COVID and need the vaccine. And for limited time only, with every vax, you get Gary Coleman.
What you talking about, Ranjit?
We know that testing isn't always available before or after death, Ahmed said. We're not worried that we're overcounting. Another doctor asked, if patients have multiple serious medical conditions and I am not sure which one is the underlying cause of death, how do I then report the cause of death? This is a very common question, Leanne Flagg, a CDC statistician, responded. She explained that doctors should use their best medical judgment and just pick the one cause they believe had the greatest impact on the death.
Wait a minute, what was I doing again? Oh yeah, cause of death. Ebola? Yeah. Oh wait, nobody's gonna believe that. I know, COVID. Recently a new study says the Delta variant is 133% more deadly than the original strain. Now that doesn't mean 133 times more. 100% again would be like double. And then the 33% is a third. So essentially that'd be like 2.3%. Or 2.3 times.
September 28, 2021, 5,992 active cases and 2 deaths. October 5th, same year, 5,936 cases, 0 deaths. In August, we see the similar ratio for the Delta variant. If we go back to March, however, where the older variants were still the main antagonists, we see a higher rate of death in November of last year, with 7,122 cases, 10 deaths. In May that year in the first wave, 4 people died when there were only a mere 8 new cases. As you can see, the death rate clearly seems lower for the Delta variant, despite what the news says.
It's 133% more deadly? How does that work? Those math numbers don't add up. From back in February, 106 people had died from the Wuhan Kung flu out of 4,500 infected. That actually is more than 2%.
Several days later, on January 29, 2020, 170 had died out of 7,000. Over 2%. 42 out of 4,259
cases in Canada died. That's just under 1%.
This is who the mandate applies to get vaccinated. Rise in cases and the unvaccinated. On new cases, the vaccine mandate. Districts will have the power to determine what vaccine requirements, depending on the COVID situation. They
has a very low vaccination rate.
Prior vaccine among older.
About the next big step in BC's fight against COVID-19.
Announcing children aged 12 to 17 can now register for the vaccine.
300,000 kids aged 12 to 17.
Vaccinated of 4,815 of those cases active. 340 patients.
To be vaccinated.
There's no default cause, he said. You don't say, oh, because they had COVID, COVID is the cause of death. State and local governments have the legal responsibility to record deaths, which the CDC then compiles. Some public health departments have set definitions for deaths from COVID-19 that go beyond what the CDC outlined in April, and that could include cases where it is uncertain whether the virus led to the person's demise. Los Angeles County public health officials said their tally of COVID-19 deaths includes any person who died from a heart attack, stroke, or another ailment if they had tested positive for the coronavirus within the last 90 days.
I have no idea what killed this man, but COVID is trending right now. And if I say COVID, nobody will distrust me. Why exactly have they followed this pattern of vaccinating the oldest down to younger people?
Your comments are so good. I like to read them, especially when you look like a moron. Comments.
Would you like to smoke some crack?
I'm so worried that the protection drops greatly at 6 months.
If you're vaccinated and are worried about the unvaccinated making you sick, you really need to sit down and think about how unbelievably stupid that sounds.
Has anyone else noticed that since Pfizer announced it will be releasing a vaccine for children 5 years and up, that all of a sudden the news and media is announcing numerous outbreaks in numerous schools? Coincidence? I think not.
They've done that for each age group from seniors down. Same old BS story. It's always the age group immediately below the age group they're just finishing vaccinating. My prediction is that after the 5 to 11 group, they'll do newborn to 5. Then they'll start over from the top again, saying seniors are the problem again.
Did you hear what happens to unvaccinated people if you're still unvaccinated by New Year's? I'll show you. This will set you straight.
This can only be described as dolphining.
That directive could end up including some people who would have died even if they were not infected. You can't use an automatic time period cutoff, said Osterholm, the Minnesota infectious disease expert. County officials explained that they believe that only looking at people with a known COVID-19 diagnosis will undercount the virus deaths. They said they were logging deaths that they couldn't determine were directly caused by the virus as COVID-19 associated. In Oregon, state public health officials said they include anyone who had tested positive within 60 days of death, including those who died from accidents such as automobile wrecks.
Come on, Doc, tell it to me straight. How did he die?
It was COVID.
COVID? But he wound up in a ditch after crashing a stolen Mercedes from the mid-'80s. And then his body was eaten by tigers.
Yeah, COVID does all kinds of things.
Oregon officials said the rules were needed to track COVID-19 and understand the severity of disease in Oregonians.
Her arm came right off! Oh my god! In all fairness, I believe COVID deaths were called exactly that, COVID deaths.
Sadly, 16 more people have died. 8 more people have died.
As opposed to...
And 9 more people have died from complications of the virus.
They always say that now.
Nearly 82%
Complications.
of eligible British Columbians
It
are
used to be deaths, or it's claimed that many lives. They've changed it specifically, and I think it's something on a legal tactic. So in the event down the road that something goes wrong, then they can't be pinned on it for saying that it directly killed them. They've been told and trained to say that, obviously.
Lawrence Muscarella, a Pennsylvania-based consultant who advises hospitals on infection control, told the Times he was struck by how differently the CDC was handling infections caused by the coronavirus compared to those from drug-resistant germs, including some known to kill 50% of those they infected.
Look, we're just running the standard pandemic playbook, step by step.
He pointed to several CDC investigations of hospital outbreaks in the past where agency scientists had said they could not determine whether the drug-resistant germ killed the patients because they were already seriously ill with other conditions when they were infected. Why is there a different standard, Muscarella said. In an interview, Anderson at the National Center for Health Statistics said the agency had followed the same principles in its April COVID-19 guidance as it had used for years and as laid out in its 2003 handbook. The physician has to figure out what the chain of events leading to the death was, he said, and what condition initiated that chain of events.
People are vaccinated or immunized, as they say, but they're growing even more and more afraid of those who are unvaccinated. In fact, can we show that one clip with the thing with the parents don't have a say in the vaccination?
Remember that you don't have to tell your parents about getting vaccinated, especially if they are controlling or abusive.
The CDC is also attributing more deaths to COVID-19 than agency officials had described in the April guidance and April 16 conference call. Anderson said that if a doctor doesn't directly blame a death on COVID-19 but includes it in Part 2, the section of the death certificate for conditions contributing to the death, the agency is including it in the count of deaths due to the virus.
You know what caused this? Have the bodies destroyed. But sir, these men aren't dead yet. Isn't that the prognosis?
It's pretty standard procedure in a pandemic like this. You just collect everything, any mention of COVID on the death certificate or whatever thing that you're looking at, he said.
Indirect victims.
Sorting out the lessons in the death certificate once they are finalized could take years. Already there is evidence that it isn't just the virus attributed to more than 200,000 deaths in the numbers reported by states so far that has ended American lives too soon.
Okay, check this out. August 4th this year, Global reports 342 new cases and 0 deaths, yet this report from CTV has 624 new cases and 4 new deaths on the same day.
I mean, a lot of people who believe in the vaccines weren't the kind that were pushed into it or forced with threats of losing their job. They just really wanted to take it. Like the people you see on the news. I can't wait for my son to get that vaccine. And if you talk about Big Pharma and the money, I mean, most of them understand about that. Some of them might even believe that they're greedy and, you know, people that might make up fake ways of quitting smoking like Chantix, and then years later all of a sudden it is revealed that they have cancer-producing agents that they take, and they take it off the shelf.
Chantix is approved by presidential candidate Dr. Ben Carson.
When I was younger, I was angry and I had a large camping knife and I tried to stab him over some Chantix. Unfortunately, he had a large amount in a bag under his clothing. That night, laid out in the forest, I was choked and I found my Chantix.
But just how serious is Big Pharma? Let's ask Harrison Ford, shall we?
You switched the samples after Lentz died.
Let's stay calm, people.
It's okay. Oh my God, her head fell off! Oh!
Questions of overcounting.
ended up working with this guy who got COVID from a coworker, and he tells me he's been fucking his wife every single day of the week. Unloading in her, trying to give her COVID, and the bitch just won't catch COVID.
Come on, you bitch! Get sick! Sick! What? What? Oh, nothing. I just said, get dick. Yeah, get dick. Oh,
This program is brought to you by Big Turk, the leading chocolate bar in Turkmenistan, and also the choice of Dirk Diggler.
Believe in Too Short.